All right, folks, it is the guy with the bow tie checking in with you live for another edition of Business of Benefits. To my right, we have the amazing Jordan Mendoza, and this is actually his second time going live with me. So how you doing, Jordan?
Hey, I'm doing great. Doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Metro Atlanta. It's really
Yeah,
nice outside. Went out for a run earlier, and I was like, man, this is like the perfect weather. It was perfect. It was
yeah,
like almost chilly, but not. It was like it was like brisk, I guess, but it felt
no
great.
worries.
And by the time I got through the run, it was actually getting warm, yeah, as it does here. So.
Yeah, it was kind of odd that it was 75 or something yesterday, and it went to like 50 today, but it warmed up.
That's it. Yeah, and that's how it usually is here. It just ends up warming up on us. So
Yep. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to hashtag Team Live and hashtag Team Replay. Please, in the comments below, throw us a hashtag Team Live if you're live and let us know where you are. Replay, do the same thing. Let us know where you are. We appreciate any kind of viewership we get. And Jordan and I met a while ago at LinkedIn Meetup ATL. We've been connected, but hadn't really spoken until that event. So, kind of for the people that don't know who you are, didn't see the first time we went live, tell them who you are and kind of what you're about.
perfect. Well, thanks again for the opportunity. I want to start off by saying that anytime I can come on somebody else's live broadcast because I don't have access yet, I'm super excited about that. So I appreciate you having me on. Like he said, my name is Jordan Mendoza. So my corporate role that I hold is I'm a training and development manager. So what that means is that I really help people grow in our organization, and I do that through creating content, facilitating content. I actually have an amazing opportunity to just a 6-month leadership program every year, which is actually predicated off of the MBTI type assessment. So that's one of my most favorite things that I do. But I support currently with the COVID-19 pandemic, I support everybody in the country. Our team has really been deployed to create a lot of content surrounding how people can use and leverage technologies to lease apartments, because we're a property management company, so people can't go visit the communities now. So we had to get creative and say, all right, what can we do to still meet with people like this face to face, but not actually have them come to the site? So our team responsible for putting together training for that. I also do consulting on the side, and I help people, build their brands, and that's usually through social media. So I help people with a framework that they can use, and through content strategy, in-person meetings. Well, now everything's virtual, so do it that way. And then in January, I launched a podcast called the Blaze Your Own Trail podcast, and most people don't know that I actually launched a podcast back in May of last year. It was just 2 solo episodes. It was just me. I don't think anyone on the planet has heard it besides me. And I really want to give this context because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And so, for anyone that's listening that maybe you're thinking about starting a show, that would really be the first tip I would give you is, find something, find the purpose that you want to start one, right? Because you got to have a good purpose in order for you to be confident about the content, but also to reach the intended audience that you're set out to reach. So, like I said, I've been on the podcasting journey. It's only been 90 days. It feels like longer just because I've released 19 episodes already. I've got episode 20 releasing next week, which will actually be the and then I'm going to start season 2. So I've already got 7 or 8 episodes recorded for season 2 already. So I'll probably do kind of a multi-episode drop when I decide to drop the second season, but it's going to be pretty quick. There's not going to be a lapse in time because I already have the episodes loaded up and ready to go.
Okay, perfect. So you have experience with podcasting. That's the purpose of today's show is, you want to start a podcast. And I'm doing live kind of as a podcast format. So I thought it was a good kind of combination of the two. So what made you decide to start a podcast back then and now?
Yeah. So the first go around, I do a lot of video. I teach for a living, right? I do adult learning. So, I thought I was like, I feel like I have a unique perspective on a lot of different subjects. And
Okay.
so that was the angle. So the original podcast was called Living is Learning podcast. But the thing is I recorded the first 2 episodes and then I got really interested in Game of Thrones. So I think I had watched a couple of seasons, and so I got more invested in that, and that told me that I wasn't passionate about that topic, if that makes sense. So I scrapped that, and then I started thinking, I was like, you know what, I really want to do this, but when I do it, I want to do it right. I want to first off, I want to come up with the name, and I want the name to have not only like a meaning for the content, but a personal meaning as well. So I
Okay.
grew up in Portland, Oregon, a massive Trailblazers fan. Portland
Okay.
Trailblazers. So the show is called the Blaze Your Own Trail podcast. So part of that is because I'm a Trailblazers fan. So I was able to incorporate my favorite team into the name, but also the whole context of my show is I interview people that have blazed their own trail in business and life. And on my show, what's most important to me and the audience is the journey that people have gone through.
Okay.
Like, it's great that you have success today, but what is it that got you to that success? And how many times did you fall? And how did you pick yourself up? And what did you go through? Right? That's what I'm really interested in. And it's been such an amazing experience so far. I've been able to have on guests that I never thought, if you would have asked me 90 to 100 days ago if I would be associated with some of these folks, I would have looked at you like you had 17 heads, So it's been such a rewarding journey so far, and literally it's just the beginning. I mean, 90 days is nothing, I look at people that have had their shows for 2-3 years, but I just love it, man. I love the journey. I love the process. I love meeting people and hearing about their stories.
Perfect. Okay. And that's kind of what got me into doing live video. Shanae Murray was kind of my introduction to live, her having me on. And I'm the same. I like the conversation, the journey, and kind of how it all happened. So there's a conceived myth that everybody has a podcast. So why are you going to do that? So for you, talk about the sales side a little bit with the podcast and the sales channel.
Yeah. So for me, and you brought up a really good point, because a lot of people are afraid to start because they feel it's too saturated. But, I looked at the stats about 60 days ago, and there's less than 1 million people that have them. And how many people are on the planet? So there, it's not too saturated. People think it is, but I would tell you, if you have a passion for getting your voice out there, there's no better time than now to start a podcast. Why? Because most people are at home, and most people are consuming podcasts at scale right now. They're listening now more than ever because they've got more time. They're listening it on their runs. Some people go running long enough to listen to 2 or 3 episodes, right? Yeah. So when we look at it from that perspective, and you brought up the content side, so the one thing that I guess I had on my side is, I create a lot of content. So if I'm already creating content around sales and leadership and EQ and all the things I'm doing, it's just another piece of content to create it around the show. So for me, I feel like I did have that unique perspective in the sense that I already knew how to market, right? Because when and this is something that scares people too, is like, when you're a podcast, especially when you're a rookie like me, 90 days in, you're just starting, you're everything. You're the host, you're the editor, you're the marketer.
Yes.
You literally hold all of those roles. So it's a startup essentially. Yep. Right. And so you have to be, I tell people, you have to be ready for that commitment, because it's a commitment of time. It's a commitment of energy. It's getting the marketing pieces ready, because I create audiograms for every episode. And so I have a software for that. I've got a software for subtitles, so there's all these different things that, starting out, if you would have told me the big old list of things that I would have had to take, it may have even scared me a little bit, but I'm definitely glad I dove in, because it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of anything I've ever done.
Awesome. And I want to check in with the audience. This is a little bit different part from live versus podcast. You get the audience saying stuff to you. Dr. Carla said hello. So, hey, Dr. Carla, she's down in Florida.
Hey,
good
Dr.
connection.
Carla.
We had Suzanne Johnson said content is king, and I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree, Suzanne. This is the content wars. I've noticed live has gotten a lot more live than it used to. So when you're doing the podcast work, how long is each episode on average?
So mine is actually a little bit longer form than most. So I see some people have, 18 minutes and 30 minutes, and mine go into up to an hour. Some of them have even gone over. So, I always tell people, like, do what you feel is right for your audience, because for me, like, some of these conversations are deep, right? And there's a lot of stories, and stories take time. And I know for me, I don't want to hear 75% of a story, right? Like, I want to hear the whole story. So sometimes when my guests get into their journey, I don't want to cut them off, because I want it to be super organic. I want it to be authentic, and I want the audience to get as much value out of the episode as possible. So yes, my episodes are a little longer, but it hasn't really I don't think I've seen a drop off, or I don't know if it would impact my listenership, but I think I am reaching the audience that likes to consume longer episodes. So I mean, I guess that's how I would look at it.
Okay, perfect. So you mentioned something that struck a chord with me, being the everything, because I mean, doing a live show is a commitment. I had to have a set time for the most part. I've had situations where I had to do it in the car. I'm like, hey, I said I'd do it. I have to do it. So how much of your time do you think you're putting into this version of the business for yourself?
So let's see. So most episodes are an hour, so you can just say an hour right there, right? The editing, most episodes, it takes me maybe 35 minutes to edit an episode. So there's an hour and a half, and then creating the audiogram takes. So I would say each episode is about 2 hours or so of time commitment, and that's just getting the episode ready, right? That doesn't include posting it on all my social feeds, right? Because, like, again, I want it to reach as many people as possible. So it's going on LinkedIn, it's going on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, it's going on my LinkedIn page I created for the podcast. So distribution is, if you want it to be seen, you have to distribute it to as many places as possible, and I think, I've built an audience of listeners in 45 countries because of that.
Perfect. And I think that's important to think about with sales, because some people will look and say, well, if I'm doing that, I'm taking away from my marketing or sales effort. So when you say you're reaching 45 countries, that's appealing, because obviously when you're making phone calls, you can only reach so many people, like one person at a time.
That's exactly it.
Walking in a business one person at a time. So that's kind of at a place where I was. And a question came from Dr. Carla. She said, what platform are you using and how often? Now, Dr. Carla, I think when you say platform, you're saying which podcast platform?
Okay. Yeah. So I host through a company called Anchor. And it's the reason why I selected it is literally because it makes it easy for anybody to start a podcast. Like anybody that's watching this or that's listening to this, you could literally go to anchor.com and, like, literally record your first episode today and launch your podcast. That's how easy it is to get up and running. Now, I wouldn't just suggest to just go and willy-nilly just record an episode. You definitely want to have a framework of, why you're starting your show, who's your intended audience and things like that. But it was ease of use for me, because I knew that when I made the commitment to launch on January 1st, that I wanted it to be easy for me to get my episodes on there. And I also wanted it to be easy to distribute the show to all of the other platforms, because that's, the one thing that I enjoy about Anchor is they send all of your data to Spotify, to Breaker, to Google Podcast, to Apple Podcast. So they actually do that work for you. Okay. And so that's what I was interested in, is ease of use and mass distribution.
Perfect. And to check in with that, if you guys listen to a podcast at least once a week, I want to see the heart the heart reactions. If you listen to a podcast at least once a week, let's see the heart reaction on the screen. A follow-up question she had to that was also, how far in advance are you recording content and getting guests? Now, this is funny, because I know for me, I try to be at least a week out, but there's been times when it's been like 2 days ahead. So for you, how far in advance are you trying to get guests and create content?
Yeah, so I'm in a good position now, and it's because a lot of people have been available, right? So I'm about actually today makes 8. I'm 8 episodes ahead right now. But that was actually on purpose because I'm about to end season 1. I'm doing 20 episode seasons. So I've released 19 so far. So once I release the next episode on Monday, I'm going to finish out season 1, but it's not going to be like a TV show where you got to wait 90 days or 6 months until the new season starts. My new season will actually start immediately. And that's because of the work that I put in on the front end to already have the content ready to release that. Because I want to, just like when I launched, I wanted to have at least the first 2 episodes ready at launch. So I'd be ahead of the game and have content for listeners. And I've put myself in that position so that when I do launch season 2, I've already have episodes and I can release a couple episodes at the same time.
Perfect. Okay. And then we had Steven Kaiser jumped in. Hey, Steven, thanks for jumping on.
Hey, Steven.
He said, can you talk more about purpose? Does the content need to be directly related to your business in order to benefit your business? That's a great question. I'll have some feedback, but you go first, Jordan.
Yeah. So I would say yes and no. So for me, again, I'm interviewing people from, I look at it from a very wide perspective because I want to reach as many people as possible. And I have I've had on entrepreneurs, I've had on authors, former NFL athletes. I've got some current athletes lined up, sports agents. So I'm doing it very wide because for me, it's also an opportunity for me to learn from people, right? And network with these people that, if you would have asked me 90 days ago, I never would have, if you would have said, hey, do you know this? Like I would have said no, and I probably won't ever know them. So it's really expanded the reach and it's given me the ability to learn new things from other people. So I guess, you can niche down and you can go very narrow. For example, like let's say that you're into sports and you want to host a sport podcast, and you can just go for sports related things. Maybe your business is a sporting goods store, and then you want to get on former athletes on the show to add value by telling you their experience in the sporting world. Then you can go that route. So I think really, Steve, to answer your question, do your thing, because for me, I don't actually do it for sales. I'm actually doing it to impact people and to add value. Now businesses come from that, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is to literally give it's really to inspire other people to look through a different lens, to get a different perspective, to see that that person is at the top right now, but it wasn't always easy for them. They had to go through the mud. They had failures. They had bankruptcy, right? Maybe they failed in their marriage, and there are these amazing pivotal moments that happen on the show. And those are the moments that add so much value to anyone that listens.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Steven, you're in a similar business to me. So insurance isn't always a fun conversation. So when I was thinking about doing this, I said, I can't just talk about insurance all day. Nobody wants to hear that at the end of the day. And I think when I first started my insurance business, I listened to a podcast from another insurance person, and someone left their phone number on the podcast saying, hey, call me if you have questions. And I'm that guy that I'll actually call the number if I have questions. So I called this person, and it totally changed the way I do my business now because of different mindset. So I definitely like that idea of sharing more people to get more access. Part of my dog going crazy in the background, but I like that to kind of expand the horizon and showcase other people. So I appreciate that.
No problem.
Dr. Carla asks, what microphone are you using? That's a good question.
So my microphone is made by a Mayano. I got it on Amazon, and it was a great deal. It was less than $100, and it came. It's a boom mic, so I can move it around. It came with the pop filter, and it came with the headphones. So if you're looking for and I don't, this isn't endorsed by Amazon or anything. I'm not trying to make a commission, but I'm just saying, like, if you want an inexpensive mic that gets the job done, this is a great one. Plus the headphones, headphones are great. My wife and I have 4 kids, so if I didn't have these on, there's probably kids roller skating upstairs or something that you all would be hearing the feedback on. So I definitely want to make sure I have this, and it helps me pay attention as well.
Perfect. So you mentioned something about sales comes from this, and I look at this now. We're in a different medium where content is king because people can't get out and all that. So is there a way you can kind of give people an idea of what kind of sales they expect to come from it. Is more conversations happen, or is it just an outright sale comes from the podcast?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So some of it, some businesses actually come from, people that I've met, like referrals. I've had a guest on and they've referred me to somebody, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we talk about them, and then they'll ask me questions about me and what I do, and so I've gotten them saying, "Hey, you need to connect with this person. I think you could help them out." So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it for me has been referrals, but not just referrals for business, but referrals for other people that would add value to the show as
Yeah.
well. And that's huge. And one of my goals on my show is I want to add as much value to my guests. So you'll notice if you go to any site, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen, if you look at my show, in the show notes, I'm putting all their links. If they have a book, I'm trying to drive traffic for them to get more book sales. If they've got their own podcast, because I interview other fellow podcast hosts, I'm driving you to their podcasts. I'm driving you to their social links because I want to add value to them. I'm super appreciative of anyone that wants to come, talk with a regular guy like me. I'm very, very humbled that I get the opportunity to speak with some of the people that I do. So I want to add as much value back to them. I had one of my guests. He said, I was on your show, and I think there's been almost 200 downloads of his episode. And he said he got 3 sales in the first week for his business.
Awesome.
And he's a public speaking coach. He works with actors, lawyers, entrepreneurs. And he said it was massive for his business. And he's like, whenever you're out in LA, I want to take you out to a nice steak dinner, because if I wouldn't have had that opportunity, I wouldn't have got that business.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think you and I are definitely both consummate personal development junkies, where we're, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, all the people like that. So do you think growing up that way, kind of being focused on personal development, makes it easier for you to have this giving mindset for the podcast?
Yeah. And for me, when I was in school, I absolutely hated school. I was that kid that, would be daydreaming all the time. If I liked the subject, I would do well. But if I didn't, then I was just really checked out. And so I actually learned better from listening to other people, from consuming their content. I recently, in the past couple of years, have starting to read a lot more books as I've gotten a little bit older. But for me, like, learning in a formal environment, it isn't the way that I learn. I actually learn better from consuming, from having conversations, and then taking that information that I've learned from them and actually applying it. I'm a practitioner. I've literally only been creating content on LinkedIn. My first video was April of last year, so it's been a year.
Yeah.
But because I've been showing up consistently and creating content, you start to build a tribe and a community of people that want to hear what you have to say. And I remember, like, before I created that first video, I was like, who's going to want to listen to whatever I have to say? Like, we all get stuck in our own heads and feel like we don't add value to the world. But the truth is, if you have information, people need to hear it.
I think that's the thing that's important for people to hear, that because a lot of people think when you get on the social media, you have to be the thought leader off the rip. You have to be the Shea Robottom off the rip. But that doesn't happen. That takes time. So I've seen your journey over the past year. We met right around when you got deep into LinkedIn. So for the people that are kind of, they've had an idea for a podcast, they thought, you know what, I want to do that. What is the very first starting block for them to do?
I would definitely get intentional about, like, finding out why you want to do it, for one. Is it just, because some people do it just because they're fans of a TV show. Some people do it because it's an extension of their business and they want to use it as a vehicle to get visibility for their business. So I would really figure out, why do you want to start a show? And then start to figure out who you want to invite to be on your show. Because, like I said, my first handful of guests, it was all cold, direct messaging. It was me reaching out, just saying, hey, I think you would add value to my show. This is what it's about. Would you be open to coming on as a guest? But what happens is, as you start to release episodes, people start consuming the content if they like it. And then people start emailing you or direct messaging you. So now I'm on the other end of the spectrum, and I never thought in a million years it would happen at 90 days in. I thought for sure I was going to have at least a year worth of show under my belt. And, you know, because I've had on guests that I, you know, when I messaged them and they messaged me back, I was surprised, you know, because I think we all get that way. You know, we all put people on a certain pedestal, and we lose sight of the fact that they're just human like us. They're just humans.
Yep.
They stub their toes. The water gets cold in the shower when someone turns on the water. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all go through the same things: loss, grief, all of those. So when I got out of my own head, right, because a lot of us get in our own heads, when I got out of my own head and I said, you know what, I'm just going to ask.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen? You know, they're going to tell me no. I am not afraid of hearing no. So let me just keep asking.
Yeah, that for me, that was definitely a big thing, because I mean, in sales, and this is probably easier if you've been in sales at some point because you get a lot of no. But I was at the same point, like, what the heck? If they say no, no big deal. A couple comments here. Dr. Carlos said, "Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate your sharing."
Hey, my pleasure.
Nakia Hill said, "Cool." Donovan Smith with the Boost Meridian said, "Awesome."
Donovan, my man, I love all the math, even though I'm terrible at math. So you've been teaching me a lot.
Donovan, tell me if I got that problem right, because I sadly want to say I was a math major in college, so if I got it wrong, I'm gonna be mad at myself. So let me know if I got mine right. Marlon said, "Nice, good practical advice."
Hey, thanks, Marlon. Appreciate that.
The key thing. I think that's that. Like you said, intention. I mean, anything you want to do in life, intention is a key thing. Because I mean, better believe it takes work having a podcast and time, and it is fulfilling. To me, I look at it like remember that show Highlander back in the day in the early '90s.
Yeah.
So I'm not chopping people's heads off, but I think about the interview world as like Highlander. I interact with somebody, have some energy coming to me, they get some energy from back and forth. That's the thing I like about it. So for those of you that kind of want to be interviewed, you know, throw a reaction. If you say, "Hey, I ever want to be on a podcast or a show or something," let's see a curious reaction. If you ever wanted to be on a show, be interviewed, because everybody has a different story. I don't think you have to be a celebrity. And I think from the people you interviewed, how many of them were actual quote unquote celebrities?
So it's probably really maybe only 20% and then 80%, you know? And I guess, and again, everybody has their own version of what a celebrity is. You know, I think, you know, I had on Heather Monahan was my second guest, and I looked at her like a celebrity, right? Because she's an author, she's a speaker, she has her own top podcast. So, you know, that was probably the most nervous I was to interview somebody, just because of the pedestal that we put on people that are out there in the public, you know. But once I listened back to her episode, I mean, I learned a lot from her. I learned that I was actually limiting myself in certain areas, you know. And you know, one of the quotes that she says in her TED Talk, and this will really resonate with a lot of folks that are listening, is she said, "Fear is a green light that means go." I mean, how amazing is that? That's what she told herself to instill confidence in herself. Fear is a green light that means go. So for anyone that's listening, I would write that down, you know, write it, scratch it. Whenever you're afraid of something, instead of it being a red light, right? Red means danger. Red means don't go. Look at it. And shout out to Heather Monahan. I learned that from you, that fear is a green light that means go.
Perfect. I love that. I've seen Heather Monahan doing TikToks and everything. So great person to interview. We had a quick comment from Marlon, said, "Before my time, Mr. Bowtie," talking about Highlander. You can YouTube Highlander. Anybody that's under the age of 30, you can Google it or YouTube it. Donovan said, "You guys inspire me." Thanks, Donovan. And we got to meet Donovan, meet up ATL as well. So right now, a lot of people are kind of cooped up. You mentioned your side hustle was coaching on the side. So would you say that this time is the perfect time to get the side hustle going, whatever it is?
Yeah, I would tell people that every day that you're living is a good time to start something new, right? To try something, because let's face it, you don't know until you actually try. You know, and here's an interesting story for the audience. I've actually had my consulting business for 3 years. And originally it was predicated on I got certified in Myers-Briggs, so I'm a certified practitioner, and I started my business so that I can, on the side, on the weekends, consult people, walk people through their personality profile assessment, do a debrief. And I started doing that for large groups and one-on-one. And it really just helps people when you can really understand how you're wired. It gives you that self-awareness that a lot of us need to really say, oh, like, because I do it this way doesn't mean I'm weird or I'm dumb. It just means that that's literally how I'm wired. The reason why I can't ever shut up is because I'm an extrovert, right? I get all my energy from the outer world. Well, there's some people that are more introverted and they get their energy from the inner world. So their preference, although that they may have to be around people for work, when they're done with work, they don't want to talk to anybody. They want to put the radio on. They don't want to hear you. Right. Yep. And so I used it first for that. And then this crazy thing started happening when I started creating content on LinkedIn. I started getting direct messages. Hey, can you help me with sales? Hey, can you help me with build my brand on LinkedIn? Hey, can you help me with emotional intelligence? And I kept telling people no for the longest time. And then I was like, what are you doing? Like, why don't you, like, there's 24 hours in a day. There's no excuse. Why don't you just start saying yes? So I started saying yes, and I started taking on clients and helping people. And so I've been doing that since August of last year. And that's been such a rewarding journey, helping people through. I don't just help them with content and things like that, but I do coach them, because I run a 6-month leadership program where I coach 15 people a year and help them through the whole 6-month leadership journey. So, a lot of the things that I've learned, I've now been taking it and executing with it. And once you start executing, there's this thing called momentum that happens, right? Yep. And when you take action, action creates momentum. And from momentum, that's where results start to happen. And when that needle starts moving, man, it gets to become a little addicting. When you start to see people have those aha moments, right? Where that light bulb goes off and they're like, man, why didn't I start this a year ago? Why didn't I start this 2 years ago? Like, that's what I enjoy about what I do. And, and listen, I do a lot of pro bono coaching, and it's just this way my mom raised me. It's like, hey, treat people the way you want to be treated, add value to other people. I'm a big believer in reciprocity. I love helping people. So people message me all the time, like, listen, let's hop on a call. I'd be happy to walk you through some things.
Yeah. That's important, I think, because of that momentum. Things hurt a lot less when you have momentum versus when you're sitting still. Think about playing tag or something, or somebody slaps you in the back. It hurts a lot less when you're running and moving than just sitting still and waiting for it. And we had some comments from Donovan, said, love the energy. Rodney, hey, Rodney, thanks for jumping on. Rodney Brooks, friend of mine out there working with the team in Albany, Georgia.
Rodney, how are you, my friend?
He said, interesting concept on fear. So you struck somebody with that green light comment.
Oh, shout out to Heather Monahan again. She's the one that created that for herself, and it's just brilliant.
Yep. And then Marlon Addison said, excellent point on introverts and extroverts and ambiverts. That's a new one for me, ambiverts. I need to read about that one. Lastly, Stephen Kaiser said, loved your comment about fear. So I want to circle back.
Stephen.
Yeah. So Anchor was the platform you use for getting your podcast going. You got your headphones, you got your microphone. Is there any other component people need to kind of get their podcast going? Absolutely.
So, and again, I am fortunate that I was already creating video before. So I want to preface by saying that, because some people may have never edited a video before. So I actually use several softwares. I use Anchor as a hosting site. I've got my headphones. I've got my mic. I also use a software called Camtasia, and I run each episode through there. And that's to get any, weird noises out and things like that. And there's some of them that are still going to be there. I don't think any audio is ever going to be the perfect quality. So definitely don't judge yourself too much on that. But I run it through Camtasia, and then I run it through a software called Headliner, and I do that so that I can create these things that are called audiograms. So what audiograms are is it allows you to overlay a static image and text and create like a wave, so that when their voices are speaking, you'll start to see a wave going across, and the audio is embedded in that. And so I love to create those for teasers. Sometimes I'll use the actual clips, like snippets of the video, as teasers with captioning. And so I have a captioning software as well. So, all in all, there's about 4 different pieces of software that I use, but they are nowhere near necessary. Like, you don't have to have all these. I just know the way I want my things to sound, and I know the way that I want to market my episodes, and I want it to be attractive. And so that's the reason why I do it the way that I do.
Okay. And you said you're 90 days and 20 episodes, you said, right?
Yeah, so I'm releasing episode 20 on Monday, but I already have 8 season or episodes recorded for season 2. So I put myself ahead of the game, and really a lot of that's predicated on COVID-19. And I know a lot of people have been impacted by this. So if you're listening and you're impacted, I definitely I'm sorry to hear that. But like for me, it's actually giving me more access to people, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody is cooped up. And so, I'm able to bring people on the show that maybe it would have taken longer if COVID didn't happen, right? Because their schedules would have dictated them to be somewhere else. And so, I'm actually looking at this and taking advantage of the fact that I don't have a 2-hour commute now. Right.
Yeah.
I can literally walk downstairs into my studio and get to work. And so I'm trying to extrapolate every ounce of time I have in a day to move the needle forward in everything I'm involved in.
Perfect. So the last question, I'll be respectful of your time before we get into the Q&A. When you started out, what's kind of the path you see for, like, episode 1 had 5 downloads, or, what are the metrics you kind of expect as you do podcasts?
It's funny because I really haven't been into the metrics at all. I've been into the reach. That's actually what I was more interested in, because I look at it like this: the downloads will come over time, right? The downloads, but the actual global reach, that's what I pay attention to. And so, like, I remember, I think I was like a couple weeks in, and I saw that it was in the United States and in Australia. And I was like, I made it to Australia. Like, I was excited. And then I would log in and I would look at it again. And then it added a couple more countries, and it added a couple more. And now I'm up to, like, the last time I looked, it was last week, it was 45 countries. And now that might be one listener in each of those places, but guess what? That's that's 45 people all over the world that get to hear stories from other people and hopefully get inspired by it. So that's really what I'm focused on, because, it's interesting because I've actually had people, that I've DM'd and I've said, hey, I would love to have you on my show. I think you'd have value. And the first thing they say is, how many downloads do you have? And I say, listen, if you want to look at this from a download perspective, I'm not your guy.
Yeah.
Because I just started.
Right.
I just start, like, you're not going to start doing push-ups today and then be ripped tomorrow.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to, it's an investment. It's an investment of your time, of your energy, And so I'm not really worried about the downloads, because I know I'm in this for the long haul. I'm not in this to release one season and then, be like, oh, that was a fun podcasting journey. No, I'm going to be doing this for the next 10, 15 years. So I'm not concerned about the downloads today, because I know they're going to be there tomorrow. Right. So I'm just very intentional about, I want to reach as many people as possible. I want to distribute the show to as many places as possible. So I am posting it. If I have a social media account, you better believe the teasers for that episode are going to be, or you're going to come across it on that platform.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's why you and I get along so much, because when I first started going live, I said, if 5 of y'all watch this, I'm happy. Like, if 5 people watch this, they didn't have to watch it, I'm super ecstatic, because that's 5 people that didn't have to watch me 5 minutes ago. So I can appreciate that mindset. Michelle Taylor Willis. Hey, Michelle. She said momentum is a thing.
Hey, Michelle.
And she said dope 45 countries.
It's a big thing. I heard Denzel Washington say one time, he was doing a commencement speech, and this really stuck with me. He was talking about his mother, and his mother said to him one time, she said, Denzel, you can run in place for a really long time and never get anywhere. And I mean, that has stuck with me so much, because it's so true. You can run in place for a real long time, but you're not creating any momentum unless you actually move forward. Right? You've got to take that step. You got to take that first step.
We had a quick comment from Tamina Ward. She said, everyone start somewhere. So
absolutely.
And that's what this is about, starting somewhere. So 1 million people have podcasts, and look at LinkedIn, for example. 1% of users create content. Is that still 1% or has it gone up?
Yeah, it's still about 1%. And so like when I heard that, and the first person I heard that from was Brian Schulman. He's actually the guy that yeah, tag him please. He's the guy that encouraged me to create my first video. You
Ah,
know, and listen, I've been in plenty of videos and shot videos and did that, but I was afraid. I was afraid of the camera. I was afraid of, that nobody would look at my content. I remember I posted that first video. I literally looked at it like every second to see how many viewers there were, and
yeah.
there was like 3, and they were all me. Because I kept looking at it, and then I was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Mhm.
Don't worry about that. Just show up.
Yeah.
Just show up. Because one thing Brian told to me, and this has stuck with me as well, you're probably figuring out that I love to learn from other people. And when people say something impactful, it sticks like a dang sponge. So what he said to me is, he said, listen, just imagine if you can inspire one person a day. Okay. And I'm terrible at math, but that's 365 people a year. Now, if you asked me to double that, I wouldn't be able to tell you that number, but I know that it's a lot more than 365. And then if you double that again and you double that again, just see how many people you can inspire, because everybody, I don't care who you are or what you do, you have value. You have something valuable that somebody else needs to hear, whether that's a story, whether that's insight, whether that's context. You have a story to share and people need to hear it.
I love that. And that's the thing I think that's hard about this. You see the people that do it a lot and you're like, man, they got 5,000 views. And human nature, you're kind of going to get sucked into it a little bit, but it is just showing up. I mean, I heard that
That's
1%
it.
thing. When I heard the 1% as well, I was like, man, I got to do more content. Because think about it. There's nothing else I think you can do. We're a platform or a type of channel, only 1% of the population uses it. So if you just start doing it, you're instantly better than 99% of the rest of the people out there. So
Yeah. And it
start.
still blows me away, Daryl, because I think when we were at the LinkedIn ATL event, I think I was at like 17,000 people followed me on LinkedIn, and
Mhm.
I was like holy cow, like what do those 17,000 people like? Why are they interested? I was still there. I was still like, what am I saying that they're interested in? And
Yep.
now I looked the other day, I just passed 42,000 people follow me, and it's like, holy cow! Do you know how many people that is? That's like some of the
Yeah.
biggest stadiums out there, like professional sports, filled with people,
Yep.
and they're interested in what I have. I'm still blown away by it. But if you stay true to yourself, if you're authentic, right, meaning you're the same person that's on this live video with Daryl that you'd see at Walmart, right? The same guy,
Yeah.
then that's you're going to build a tribe. You're going to build people that have the same values as you, that are interested in the same things that you do, and that may learn from you,
Yep.
right? And so, for anyone that's watching this and maybe you've been afraid to start creating. Again, there's people that need to hear what you have to say, but you're never going to know if you don't actually take that first step.
Yeah. A wise thing I learned from Kenyatta Gordon. I interviewed her a while ago. She's going to be at Outbound next time, whenever Outbound gets to happen. She talked about unused but usable content. Unused but usable content. So those things that that you never talk about with anybody, but it's very valuable to your audience. That's the place to start, I think. Case in point, me with insurance. There's a ton of stuff I know nobody ever talks about, and that's kind of what I'm sharing. So everybody just start making content, put it out there. And Steven had a quick comment. Well, actually, first Michelle had a comment. She asked the name of the podcast. I tagged your podcast, but go ahead and say it for everybody that can't see the tag.
Yeah, it's called the Blaze Your Own Trail podcast, and it has a black background with mountains and a big flame right in the middle. So you definitely can't miss it. And it is on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Breaker, Google. Like you name a podcast, and it's on there. If it's not on there yet, you'd let me know, and I'll make sure it gets on there, right? Because again, I want it to reach as many people as possible.
Perfect. And then Steven Kaiser had a comment, said fear plus effort equals momentum. I love
Love
that.
it.
A saying I got from the Energy Bus, I think it was the Energy Bus. The only two things you're 100% in control of are your attitude and effort, and everything in life.
Man, preach, brother. I mean, listen, we can only control the controllable.
Yep.
Right. And if we remember that, life gets a lot easier, because we can't control this virus.
Yes.
Right. We can't control the impact the chaos, and we can't control the weather, but we can control our attitude, right? We can control whether we smile or not, right? We make those decisions, and so if you look at it from that framework and say, I can only control what I can control, life actually gets a lot easier.
Before we get out of here, for people, so we want to make sure people understand, because Michelle asked about your outside source of income. Neither one of us is using these platforms as a primary source of income. Jordan's podcast isn't his main source of income. Me going live is my main source of income. So it is just to, in my opinion, supplement what I'm already doing. And also just make more impact, like you said. There's more people that can see me here than I can physically walk into at any given time.
That's it. Yeah, nope. There's nobody that writes me. I don't have sponsors. I don't have anything like that. Now, do I have aspirations for that? Absolutely. Like, my goal is I want to have a top 50 podcast, like for the business category. That's my goal. Now, I haven't set any parameters with that, because I want it to happen organically. Because if it happens organically, then that tells me that people actually enjoy the content, right? I mean, that's what I want. I don't want to have forced content where people feel like they have to listen to it. I want people to want to listen to it because it inspired them. It was impactful. They learned something, right? It's really it's almost like it's like a radio show, right? It's educational for people. And if people are getting something out of it, then I'm going to keep doing it.
Perfect. Well, I think that wraps it up pretty well. So for those of you that are new to this podcast, I tagged it in the comments, Blaze Your Own Trail podcast. Follow Jordan. He and I interact all the time on LinkedIn. So if you see him, you probably see me, or vice versa, because we like what each other's doing. So what's one last parting thing you leave with people about the podcast or about your day job? What's some parting words you leave for folks?
So I would say this, whatever you want to do in life, whether it's a podcast or maybe you want to start a side hustle or something like that, like, just take that first step. That is the first step. Let me tell you, it's always the hardest, right? That first 10 feet that you walk is gonna be the hardest. But if you look at it from the lens that, and you really love the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, the journey is going to be so rewarding when you look back 90, 120, 12 months, 2 years behind, and you see what you went through to get to where you are. It's going to be worth it.
Awesome. I love it, Jordan. I mean, you have some great content for folks and deliver. I appreciate y'all for watching it. It'll be in the replay, so share it with anyone that might need to learn from Jordan about making a podcast, or just get some inspiration. Share the episode, follow the hashtag Business of Benefits, and we will catch you guys next time. Please be safe.
Hey, thanks everybody. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Daryl.
No problem. Enjoy quarantine life. If you haven't walked outside, get outside. We'll see you guys next time.
That's it.